you got to get dialed in on those fundamentals before you can start working on like the backspin and the
right.
what's going to take you from like 90% to 95%. So
Right.
focusing on getting from like 0% to 90%. I'd say those, I kind of break it into like 4 overarching areas of focus. They all work hand in hand. I think the first is like narrative. I think before you can even really start marketing yourself, you need to understand exactly what you're marketing, what makes you unique, both about your sound as well as your personality. I mean, if you think about artists, I mean, in what creates fandom in general, it's, yeah, people have to like your product and the music, but a lot of the connection and the fan base really responds and resonates with like the artist as a person and their personality. So I think you really got to get dialed in on what is your narrative, what makes you unique. You can't try and please everybody. So it's more important that you can create a narrative that's going to resonate with the people you're specifically after, rather than trying to like be everything to everyone. So I'd say start by trying to get dialed in on that narrative. The next thing I think is on this bucket of content. I think you need to create content. And I think content across different platforms, this goes for like releasing music, but this also goes down to social content, YouTube content. I think this is how you're going to build a fan base. This isn't rocket science, but a lot of people just aren't doing it and doing it often enough. So I think get creative. What's going to make you stand out? How can you showcase that narrative? How can you document various elements of your life? I think how can you do so in a way where you're not being overly precious, which leads into the next point, which is consistency. I think on the consistency side, this is critical. I think you can't just check off like, oh, I made my content this month, but you should be doing this on a daily basis. And a little bit we could dive into like what we feel is an optimal cadence and posting cadence and rhythm across different platforms. But generally speaking, you just need to be consistent. And if you're overly precious about the content you're creating, and even this goes for music, right? Like if you're only releasing music once a year, like in the early stages of your career, when you're trying to build a fan base, you should be releasing music regularly because that's how you're going to engage and grow your fan base.
Right.
So the last bucket is like partnerships. And this is how can you co-create content or tap into existing communities that are filled with your target audience. I think that goes for doing influencer collabs and finding cool ways to co-create content, whether this is like Instagram Live, split screen, or Zoom calls that you're recording, or you're hitting the studio with somebody. Whatever it may be, how can you co-create content with other influencers? And they don't have to be like major mega influencers. You can find people that are like at a similar size as you. And if you keep doing that and you get exposure in front of their audience, you're essentially like siphoning their audience to help them be your fans. And over time, you could get to doing collabs that make sense for bigger and better influencers. And then the last note there within partnerships is like, it's not just about influencers. There's user-generated playlists on Spotify. There's different blogs. There's different media outlets. Building relationships with those different gatekeepers and those different online communities will also be incredibly valuable. And I think it's just a way in which you can tap into existing communities rather than having to start from scratch.